So lesson 4A, review of negative exponents. You learned this last year. It's just a quick review. Students will be able to simplify expressions with exponents that are positive, negative, and zero. The language objectives, students will be able to explain in words the process of simplifying exponential problems. And why are we learning this? This is important for real-world problems, like representing the size of something very small, such as the diameter of a white blood cell. So some background information. You're taking a look up here. This is not in your notes. You're just watching. 3 to the 4th. We've already talked about this. We read this as 3 to the 4th power. The base is that 3, and the exponent is the 4. This literally means 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, and we say that is the expanded product. We multiply all of this together, we get 81. We looked at these review problems. 5 squared, if we write it as an expanded product, is 5 times 5, which is 25. Number 2, negative 3 in parentheses to the 3rd power means that we have 3 negative 3's, which is negative 27. We talked about the special exponent problems. Make sure you're staying with me. I will give you time to do the problems in our notes. Just stick with me right now. This means that the exponent affects what it's touching, if you recall. And here it is touching the 4 and not the negative. So we have 3 4's and 1 negative. We multiply those together and we get negative 64. Same with this one here. The 2 is touching the 6. That means the 6 is being repeated, but the negative is not. So this would be negative 36. Okay? And then we did a couple of problems together. And this is just a quick visual. We did these the other day together. Now this is all with positive exponents, as you see. We're talking about negative exponents today. So looking at positive exponents and 0, we list them out, 1 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, and we take one of the 2's away each time we reduce here, and we have 2 times 2 times 2 times 1 for 2 to the 3rd, which is 8. 2 to the 2nd is 1 times 2 times 2, which is 4. 2 to the 1st is 1 times 2, and we talked about how we're dividing by 2 each time. We get to 2 to the 0, and that becomes 1. We talked about positive exponents indicate repeated multiplication, and a number to the 0 power equals 1. So this is where we extend it to today's lesson. This we talked about last year in 7th grade, but we have not talked about it yet in 8th grade. So notice the pattern was dividing by 2 on that previous slide. We are going to continue with that pattern. So watch what happens. As I divide by 2, I get 1. As I divide by 2, 1 divided by 2 is 1/2. 1/2 divided by 2 is 1/4. 1/4 divided by 2 is 1/8. And 1/8 divided by 2 is 1/16. So you see a pattern here as we're dividing by 2. And take a look how that corresponds with our negative exponents. Okay? Negative exponents indicate repeated division, where positive exponents indicated repeated multiplication. All right, here's our comparison. Watch this. 5 squared is 25, and 5 to the negative 2nd is 1/25. We call this the reciprocal. We're taking and finding the reciprocal when it becomes negative. Negative 3 to the 2nd is 9. So negative 3 to the negative 2nd within parentheses is 1/9. I know it's painful to sit with me. Just sit with me for a minute and then we'll move on, I promise. This one, take a look at how this works. If I have negative 2 and I don't have parentheses raised to the 3rd power, is negative 8, and so the reciprocal of that when I have a negative exponent is negative 1/8. As a fraction, watch how we deal with this fraction. If I have 3/2 to a positive exponent compared to with a negative exponent, notice I found the reciprocal. Now I found the reciprocal of each one, but down here in the fraction you have to make sure that they're flipped. It's the reciprocal, okay? All right. Looking at your notes, we're ready for you to write. I know you're eager to write this down. So, based on what I just showed you on the previous slide, go ahead and do these 1 through 6, please. Okay, taking a look at number 1. You've had a chance to talk in your shoulder partners, and we see that 2 to the 3rd power is 8. And so the reciprocal of that is 1/8. Number 3, 6 squared is 36. And the reciprocal of that is 1/36. Number 5 is 3 to the 4th power, which is 81. And the reciprocal of that is 1/81. How many of you guys got, there's 6 problems there. You got 5 or 6 correct. Excellent. Good job. Now, as I walked around, I saw you guys discussing and shoulder partners and people fixing. That's fabulous. It's not okay to say, oh, I think you're smarter than me, so I'll just write down what you have. But you need to be talking about it. And if you have something that's different, have a conversation and figure out who is correct. All right, so let's look at 7 through 10. 7 through 10 are very similar to the ones before. The only difference is now we have a fraction inside our parenthesis. So I'll do 7 and 8, and you'll do 9 and 10. 7 and 8, I have 3 1/2. So I have 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2, which is 1/8. For number 8, I need to find the reciprocal of 1/8, which is 8. Go ahead and do 9 and 10, please. So 2/5 we should have as 4/25. And if we have 2/5 in parentheses to the negative 2nd power, we have to find the reciprocal of that, which is 25/4. It should be clear at this point that negative exponents represent reciprocals to the same situation as with positive exponents. You should see that. Yes, ma'am? No, not right now. Yes. Okay. So now take a look at these different types of problems. If you just glance, you notice that some are negative inside the parentheses, some are positive inside the parentheses, some have no parentheses, some have a negative outside and a negative inside. So let's take a look at these. Number 11. We have to find the reciprocal, so that's 1/3 times 3, which is 1/9. Number 12, because there's a negative exponent, I have to find the reciprocal. So it's 1/2 times -2 times -2. And that's negative 1/8. Now there's several ways that you can write negative 1/8, and I've given you options up on the screen. You can put 1/8, or -1/8, or a negative out in front. They all mean the same thing, and it does not matter how you write it. Number 13, we have to find the reciprocal, but notice that our exponent is only touching the 5. So my 5 is being repeated, but my negative is not. So we have to make sure that we have this written correctly. Sorry. Which is negative 1/125. Make sure your notes are complete, please. Number 14, I have a negative outside of my parentheses as well as a negative inside. So the negative that's attached to the 4 is inside the parentheses, and that is being repeated twice. First, I have to find the reciprocal. So 1 goes over it. Go ahead and change it to make it look like this. The 1, because there's a negative exponent, I need to put a 1 over. That's what I have to do when there's a negative exponent. I find the reciprocal of that number. So I put 1 over. There's a negative outside, and I have negative 4 being repeated twice in my denominator. Gives me negative 1/16. So notes are not optional. It is not okay for you to sit there and not take them. Everyone is writing this down. You need this when you get home. Okay? All right, looking at the next part, we're going to talk about power to power. This, again, you talked about last year. This is what you saw last year and earlier this year. 5 to the third to the second. We talked about this the other day. 5 to the third means that we have 3 5s, and then we have 2 of those parentheses. Okay? Or we can think of it as 5 to the third 2 times, and then we write that out, and look, we get the exact same thing, which is 5 to the 6th. So 15 and 16 we're looking at here. 15 says 2 to the negative third. That's inside of our parentheses. Go ahead and make your directions match my directions. For number 15, I see that I have a negative exponent, which tells me to find the reciprocal. So right away, I'm going to get rid of that negative exponent by finding the reciprocal. Inside my parentheses, I now have 1 over 2 times 2 times 2. And I know that I have 2 of those. You're writing this down. I have 2 of them because my exponent outside my parentheses is a 2. So I have 2 of those. So now I see that I count my 2's and I leave it in exponential form. So I see that I have 1 over 2 to the 6th. The 6 is attached to the 2 because that's what is being repeated. So make sure you have this written down. Look at number 16. Number 16, I need to get rid of the negative exponent. The way that I do that is I find the reciprocal. So that first exponent of negative 2, the way that I make that a positive is I find the reciprocal. But notice I still have a negative exponent, don't I? So I have to deal with that. So I have to take this now and find the reciprocal and list it out 3 times. Watch how I do this. Here's 1, 2, and 3. Anytime there's a negative exponent, you have to make it positive. So the way that you make it positive is by finding the reciprocal. So now I count 3's, and I have 6. So it's 3 to the 6th. Do you remember this from last year? Yes. Yes, good. Some of you may not. All right, let's take a look. You do 17 and 18, please. They're very much like the ones we just looked at. So 17, we have 1 over 5 to the third 2 times. We have 2 of those. The reason I'm finding the reciprocal is because I have that negative 2 on the outside of the parentheses. So this will give me 1 over 5 to the 6th. Put your thumb up if you got that right. Fabulous. Good job. Number 18. Inside my parentheses, I have a negative exponent. I get rid of that by finding the reciprocal. I still have a negative exponent outside of the parentheses. I need to get rid of that negative exponent, make it positive. And I do that by, again, finding the reciprocal. So this should be 4 to the third power. So make sure you have that correct. And then I'm going to let you do 19 through 22, please. Go ahead and solve 19 through 22. For number 19, we should have 1 over 3 to the 24th power. Notice the 24 is attached to the 3 because that is being repeated. Number 20 is 1 over 4 to the 21st power. 21, 1 over negative 2. Notice the negative 2 is not in parentheses to the positive 15th power. 22, this one is in parentheses. We have negative 5 in parentheses to the 25th power. Okay? So we're going to look at a couple more problems before we finish. Number 23 and 27 in this next group. 23 and 27, we're going to leave as a positive and positive exponential form. The reason for that is because will this exponent be larger than 5? Yes. So I'm not going to ask you to multiply out a whole bunch of 3's because it's too big. What about this one? Do you think this one will be larger than 5? Yes. So I'm not going to ask you to multiply those out. Would you like me to work through 23 through 27 with you or turn you loose? Turn you loose. Go ahead. So, for number 23, we should have 3 to the 12th power. Number 24, because negative 2 is in parentheses, we have 1 over 16. Okay? Number 25 should be negative 1 over 16. 26 is negative 36. And 27, we're leaving an exponential form, negative 1 over 2 to the 28th power. How are we doing with this? Thumbs up if I feel good. I'm ready to work on homework. Sideways if I've got most of it. I'm kind of good. Thumbs down is you were speaking a different language today. Okay? Fabulous. Let me get the homework out to you.